Welcome to Conquest Creations. I'm here with Jordy, and today we're having a look at his Mordor army. Alright, Jordy, thanks for coming on.
No dramas. It's wicked. I'm keen.
This army looks absolutely gorgeous. Do you want to just give me the rundown? What's kind of the theme behind this army? What is it? And what's going on with it?
Yeah, so we all know the big evil orcs from Return of the King, the Mordor orcs. So the Mordor orcs are like just sort of slightly better treated orcs amongst the Mordor rank. More fed, more well trained. In game terms, they're just like a little bit stronger and tougher. So I've sort of got these guys broken into two different lists, and that's the beauty of this sort of Mordor horde is you can use it in any which way. The sort of main one that you will be familiar with would be Gothmog's Legion. Big Gothmog here. So when he's in that legion, he just gets a whole lot of buffs to all these little orc boys. And he himself is just already a bit of a killer with his Master of Battle and sort of gets that wicked board control. And then the other half, you break it off, then you've got the Blackgate Opens. So I can run these sort of models in two different legions, and they do play quite a bit different. Because then in Blackgate Opens, your orcs sort of kill a little bit better. And then you've got the big chiefy and just a dabbling of magic with the Mouth of Sauron.
And yeah, that's what's so cool about orcs. You can paint one set of orcs and then use them in so many different army lists, and they play so differently each time.
Yeah, I love that about any profile that's sort of interchangeable and different in the list that it's run in.
Yeah, so you can paint, if you're just getting started, you don't know what army to go with, just paint a bunch of orcs and you've got like 5 options from there. Yeah. So let's talk more about Gothmog's Legion. Why is that different to a regular army? Like, what's special about Gothmog's Legion? Why would I be interested in playing that?
Yeah, Gothmog's Legion sort of takes what Gothmog already does and just kicks it up a notch. So if you hate men, good news, Gothmog hates men. He already has this aura of 3-inch giving hatred to orcs, and that includes himself. Hatred men.
So hatred gives +1 to wound against any men models.
Yeah, that's right.
Minas Tirith, Easterlings, Haradrim, Rohan, anything.
Yep.
That's a lot of army lists. That's gonna come up quite a lot.
Off the top of my head, it wouldn't be 50%, but yeah, you'd see them at tournaments.
Close to it,
like every second game, So he comes with it as a 3-inch, but when you take this Legion, it bumps all the way up to 12-inch, which if you play the game, that's a big old bubble. That's like a 24-inch each way, 12-inch each way, so a 24-inch bubble, basically, of this hatred rule.
And a majority of the time, that's going to be your whole army?
Yeah, and he sort of wants to play center role anyway, because he's got his Master of Battle, which just means if your opponent calls any heroic action, even ones that aren't naturally in his profile, Gothmog's allowed to counter for free without spending a point of might. So if you win that priority and they call a heroic move, well, guess what? Cost them a might, didn't cost you anything.
Yeah, and that's I think that's so cool. A lot of the commanders in game, like our Aragorns, our Boromirs, our Denethors, they're really good at killing stuff, but there's no real rules that represent their command ability, and that's what Gothmog has. It shows that he might not be the best fighter, but he can marshal his troops the best, and I really really love that they did that with his profile.
Yeah, it's a rule that was intrinsic to him, and it was a really cool representation of like a strategic mind rather than just having like 5 attacks and being a beatdown model. That's easy. I think they did really well, like doing this Master of Battle representing a good commander.
Yeah, and it brings that interest in that diversity of profiles into the game. I think that's the biggest thing that stands out for me about Lord of the Rings is I think a lot of people, they look at the difference between an elf and a man is not that different. Their defense, strength.
One's a better fighter.
One's a better fighter. But the subtle differences make such a big difference. And then when you take a big difference, that is just game changing. Playing against Gothmog so different to playing against like an Aragorn or something.
Because when you've got those priority roll-offs where you go, I call a heroic move, you call a heroic move, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter who gets priority. But against Gothmog, it does matter. Because if the Gothmog player gets it, they'll get their move for free and you won't.
So what other models do you use with Gothmog?
So there's Guritz. This is the OG. At the front, Master of Reserves now. He just comes with that sort of reinforcement +1/-1 roll. So in Maelstrom or Reconnoiteur or any variants, you've got a pretty big advantage. If I roll like the 1 or the 2, I can bump that up for free. Or if I roll like the 3 or 4, I can minus them, like up or down to whatever I need. So that's pretty big.
And for people that are just getting into Middle Earth and aren't sure exactly what we're talking about, there's a few scenarios where you come in from the board edge and you roll a dice. And if you get a low roll, then your opponent can actually decide what point on the board edge you come in. And Guritz can change that. He gives you so much more control over it. And you have +1 and -1 because sometimes you want to use the -1 to be able to come in a different position. Like if you get a 5, you can come on the... Maybe it's north and south or east and west. But you can minus that
and then
to
you
get the opposite.
Go the other side. Yeah, so if
really...
I've got Gothmog clumped here and Guritz wants to join this way, I can minus it to get it, to make it happen.
Yeah, exactly. And that, it doesn't happen in every scenario, but when it does happen, it's saving you either a lot of might or just outright saving your whole army from being split up. Which is
and those Maelstrom ones can be real swing or miss if you roll poorly. But with Guritz, now you've got this big incentive. And just him alone, it's just a 3 might caddy with March.
Yeah, he's kind of like an insurance policy model, where you're obviously not always going to use it, but when you come up against that, it's so worthwhile. And he only pays, 5 or 10 points for that ability?
I think he gets it for borderline free.
Yeah.
Because he comes with a 2-handed weapon, which technically costs. And he comes with an extra might, which costs, which I think that's all baked into his profile.
Yeah, because I've definitely heard people, kind of saying that he's not the best one, but I think that he's definitely a really, really good option to always be taking.
He's just a good might caddy, and in the scenario where it matters, he's huge.
Yeah. And what else? You have a shaman in here?
Yeah. So the big important thing for orcs is their really low courage. So if you ever break or come up against a terrifying army or terrifying model, your courage 2 will really be a hamstring to you.
Yeah.
So we've brought the Shaman in to give off that Fury buff, which is just a 6-inch aura. It's a spell with a 6-inch aura. All models within 6, all orc models, are fearless.
And that is massive. I know when I first started playing the game, I kind of didn't think that courage was that important.
You just sort of ignore it and be like, whatever.
Yeah, but now I'm always taking a Shaman where I can because they're just so powerful.
If you can get a Shaman, you get a Shaman. If you get a Warhorn, you get a Warhorn.
Yeah, exactly. And so tell me about these banner models. Honestly, I think that the Morannon Banner Bearer is one of my favorite models in the whole entire range. It's absolutely exceptional. And you've got some pretty awesome designs. So just talk about them. Tell us about what you did with these banners.
Yeah, so I 100% agree. I think as far as the banner model goes, this dude stands just head and shoulders above any other model. Like just like the pose, he's just like trudging along with his big old banner, and just like the sheer like volume of the banner itself, like it's massive. So yeah, they're just such a cool model.
And the guy is way bigger, and I think people might think that's out of scale, like it was a mistake, but I think it's so intentional because if I'm a commander, I'm going to give the banner to the biggest, toughest,
the biggest, meanest
guy.
dude.
Yeah,
he gets the role.
It just makes so much sense.
So this one I've done a little. It was sort of, I didn't know what designs to like chuck on these banners initially, so I thought, why not do like one with Barad-dûr itself on there? So I've painted up like a little, and it's got an artistic taste to it because it's got sort of like its outer rims are like heated up, I guess. Like there's a fire glow to it rather than just being the straight black Barad-dûr that you'd know in the movies. But these orcs are quite artistic. So so I've got the little Barad-dûr, and there's a little Eye of Sauron at the top if you can see it when we get the close up. And for this one, I did want the symbol because they naturally have this little Witch King symbol built into them. So I did want that to be somewhat visible. So I sort of gave this but I didn't want it to like be that standout black on white, face that comes through. So I did this sort of like grey scale shade, and the Witch King symbol's just sort of etched out a little bit. And down the bottom, one of the orcs has done a painting of Barad-dûr again, But then he's done a little painting of himself when you see it. A little Scully down the
I've
bottom.
definitely missed that when I've looked at it in the past. So I have to
It's
check it out.
very subtle, but
Yeah.
yeah. So there's the banners, and geez, they're just good.
Are you always taking both of them?
Yeah, I think when I get to 650, it's double banners.
Yeah.
And probably in 500 as well. Orcs, obviously, they don't have the fight value, so you need to get weight of numbers.
Yeah.
And one of the most efficient ways to get weight of numbers is to get that banner reroll. Because now each of my 1 orcs is basically doing the fight job of 2.
So I remember when I was a new player, I looked at banners, they were 25 points, and I was like, that's like, I can get 2 more guys for that. So I would never
So
take them.
expensive.
And I always see it when people are posting their first army list and saying like, oh, I'm just about to get my first game, what do you think of this? There's never any banners. And they are so powerful that, yeah, always take them. What you said.
It's this massive force multiplier.
No, it just makes such a big difference. Alright, so we've talked about Gothmog's Legion side. I want to talk about the other side, which is the Blackgate opens. So when you play that, you just take out Gothmog and Guritz and use the other heroes
Away
instead?
they go. Yep.
Yeah, awesome.
So with the Blackgate opens, they've got a special rule, as you know from the movies. There's that big chief that 1v1's Aragorn.
So that's this guy here.
The big beefy chiefy, as he's colloquially known. He gets an extra might, will, and fate, and he becomes permanently fearless, which is actually bigger than you think. Well, first of all, you get to charge terrifying models non-stop. But when your army breaks, you've got this 6-inch anchor where your models aren't running.
Yeah.
So it sort of goes against what happens in the movie, but let's ignore that.
Yeah, I don't know. Sauron just hasn't died yet.
Yeah, that's right. This is when he's still good to go. You get this 6-inch anchor where your orcs are safe. So you get this pseudo-shaman ability in there. And then the other sort of identifying factor of that list is you get the Mouth of Sauron. And he became borderline good in this edition. He's definitely not like the be-all and end-all. But he became 5/5, which was huge because now he gets to take on infantry at a whim. And he gets to kill like low-level captain models and sort of stuff like that. And he gets to, alongside that, bring a couple of spells along with him. He's only got 4 will, and unlike most wizard models, it's not refreshable. But he's got, I believe it's Transfix. I think he has Instill Fear, and I believe he's got Drain Courage as well. But the big one that you're probably going to be chucking around is that Transfix.
Yeah, definitely.
You get your big troll chiefy, who's fight 7 naturally, into like your Aragorn or your, I don't know, Aomer. Transfix the Aomer or Aragorn, and then guess what? The beefy chiefy wins that fight.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's interesting, you say he's not that good. I've actually heard some people, I know he's played a lot in some of the European metas, saying that he's in the list of top 10 heroes in the game. I haven't had a chance to play with him yet. So I'm really interested to give him a shot and see what he does. And what is, so obviously in Blackgate Opens, you get your special ability for the big chieftain. What is the other special rule of the Blackgate Opens?
Yeah, the orcs get, it's kind of like an easier animosity. If you outnumber your opponent in a duel, in a sort of a fight, so you've got 2 orcs versus their 1 Minas Tirith warrior, your 2 orcs get +1 to wound. So it's basically just better animosity because you go, we should probably explain animosity.
Animosity, animosity. In some armies, like Uguk Scouts Legendary Legion, if you have an orc and an Uruk-hai fighting in the same combat, you get +1 to wound, which is a thematic representation of the orcs and the Uruk-hai.
Just trying to outdo each other.
Yeah, just trying to outdo each other. But in this, every orc's trying to outdo each other. Yeah, that's right.
Every orc's just trying to outdo each other.
Yeah.
So they all get +1 to wound, which being a strength 4 model, kind of turns you into a strength 6 model in a roundabout way. Like that's big. If you win a fight with 2 orcs versus their 1 dude, you're probably killing. You're killing on 5s or 4s, like massive.
And yeah, a lot of other war games, you get +1 to wound, and that in other games that's not that big of a deal. In Middle-earth, that is humongous. Like +1 to wound in this game changes a lot. You're generally wounding on 6s or 5s, so to go from 5s to 4s, that's a massive difference. It's such a big deal.
Yeah, one of the cool things about our game is that it's not just everybody dies. You know, if I shoot you, you're dead. It's really a defensive game where your models do stick around.
Yeah.
This Legion tries to get rid of that part, which is good. So it's real lethal. Turning a 5 up to a 4 up, massive.
Yeah, and The most popular games like Warhammer, they might go 5 or 6 turns. Middle Earth, you'll often go 10 or 15 turns.
Yeah.
Obviously not all the time. Sometimes you have shorter games, longer games. There's no turn limit in this game. So when you do have those 15-turn games, if everything dies turn 1 and 2, well, you can't have a long game. So that's why everything in Lord of the Rings is a lot more durable than in other games.
And it becomes a game which I really love, of controlling objectives rather than trying to kill your opponent, right? Because if I've set my defense 6 orcs on an objective, my opponent has to ship me off. That's not easy to do. Whereas in let's say 40k, if I just devote all my firepower to one unit, they're probably dead. In Lord of the Rings, that's just not possible. You have to force people off of these sort of things. Yeah,
and also I think that Lord of the Rings, it really represents what I imagine actual fighting's like. You've got your walls, there's pushing and there's pulling, and you might have to lose ground as you get pushed back, and then a big hero, if they're being fought by a horde of troops, they're actually able to fight them all off instead of take hits. So I think it's the most thematic gameplay, as well as obviously it is themed around the Lord of the Rings. So that's, I think, my favorite thing.
Yeah, I think it's obviously never going to be a perfect representation, but it's quite a good representation, I would think.
Yeah. Okay, there's one more key model here that we haven't talked about, and that is the troll drummer.
Love it. Absolutely love this dude. He's a happy troll with his happy drum. So my reasoning is, if your army has a war drum available, you should get a war drum.
So what does a war drum do?
So war drums are only seen on the evil side, as far as I know. They have this 12-inch aura, and at each turn, before heroics are called, you can elect a drum. If you drum, your models move an extra 50% basically, but they're not allowed to charge. So an infantry model goes from move 6 to move 9, and a cav model goes from move 10 to move 15. In our game, being able to cover that ground is huge. For objective scenarios, you get to that objective a whole turn earlier. If my opponent has just a massive bow and arrows or crossbows or whatever, I'm meeting you about 2 to 3 turns earlier.
Yeah, I totally agree. If your army has a war drum, take a war drum every time. They're so good. And they make the game more fun, because it sucks when you're stuck on the other side of the table and your opponent's just shooting you and your stuff's dying. So when your stuff actually makes it into combat, it's just so much more exciting, so much more fun. And you just get to objectives earlier as well. They're so powerful. So there's one extra thing you can do with a drum, right? If you call a heroic march and you drum, what happens?
Oh yeah, you stack them. So if Gurit's here called a march and my drum elected to drum, all my infantry models are now moving 12 inches. My cav models would technically be moving 20 inches, which is just the entire board, basically.
That is ridiculous.
So I can close that gap. If I'm versing Rangers of Ithilien, I'm going toe-to-toe with them in like 1 to 2 turns. Of course, you can't charge, and you doubly can't charge if you do that, but, doesn't matter anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome. Well, if that's all, that's all. Thanks for watching. Make sure you leave a comment saying what kind of armies you want to see next in the showcase. We've got a massive community with a massive amount of armies, so there's going to be a lot of people coming on here and showing them off. So you get to decide what armies we get on first.
Hell yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks for watching, and until next time, guys, have a good one.